This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What do we wait for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Geek Therapy Radio. That's all you got to type in there, and you'll find me all across social media. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I think that's the name of the show. I'm Johnny Hamburger, your mental curator, and this show is just going to be a really fun, awesome show this week. There really hasn't been anything too major breaking that has broken in geek news. And of course, I know that's completely subjective. It depends what kind of geek you are, whatever your geek thing is. But as far as like major, super hot topics that I could put in the title of this show to get all the hits and clicks, there's not too much going on. So this show is going to be cool and touch base on a whole lot of different things. Real quick, thank you for all the birthday wishes. I turned 35 years old last weekend, and I still feel 18 years old in my mind, in my heart, and in my spirit. Still feel like a teenager, but my body has many ways of letting me know that no, I am not, and that I am in fact 35 years old. It lets me know with my gut, my butt, my bones, my muscles, and my hair. All of those things let me know that I'm 35. And I keep a skateboard in the trunk of my car at all times, if for nothing but my own hubris. Because though it tempts me and taunts me, "Hey buddy, you wanna ride?" I say, "No, skateboard. I know what you do to my ass bone, and I don't want any of that anymore." But I keep it in there, man. I keep the skateboard and I flick the wheel. Oh, skateboard, I know I can skate. Falling is just much worse when you're 35 versus when you're 18, okay? That's all I'm going to say about that. I still feel like I'm 18 in my spirit and my heart, but my body. Look on the video if you're watching on YouTube. This is 35 years old. That's not 18 years old. I had a Jesus cut when I was 18 years old, down to my shoulders. Moving on. The topic du jour of this segment. Does air pollution make you more stupider? And if you get more stupider, do you go to Jupiter? Or however it goes. They have conducted a study, 2 universities, one in Beijing and one in the United States of America, Yale specifically. So Beijing Normal University and Yale conducted this test. What they did was they collected data from this exact same 50,000 people. They gave them a standardized test in 2010 and 2014. Those 2 dates are going to be very important towards the end of this segment, and I'll explain why then. But 2010, they gave them a test, all 50,000 people. 2014, they gathered them up again, gave them the exact same test, exact same questions. 4 years later, in 2014, and what they were trying to do, Beijing, if you don't know, is one of the most air polluted cities on the face of planet Earth. That's not news to anybody. So they're trying to find, does this air pollution create decreased cognitive ability? Is there a correlation there? And they found that, although slight, yes, there is a correlation between air pollution and decreased cognitive ability. And surprise, surprise, to no one's surprise, it affects men more than it affects women. And I'm not saying that as a sexist thing. Oh, it's because men are smarter and they have more to lose. No. That's because I know my own sex, and I know that it doesn't surprise me that we get more dumber as the years go on. I don't think you need scientists to tell you that much. So, this is kind of an important study, and that was the nutshell version of the study. I read this study from 2 different outlets, from Ars Technica and from newatlas.com, and both after reading both reports on the study, I was left with the same question, which I'm sure a lot of you are thinking right now. How much of that is pollution and how much of that is just not remembering stuff that you remembered 4 years ago? I pose this question to just the vast majority of people. Are you better at math now than you were 4 years ago? Just the general population? I submit that we are not. And the two parts of this test were mathematics and verbal, I can't even talk. Don't take my word for it. I'm just on the radio. What's your words? Your verbal abilities. And they found that it has decreased over those 4 years, and it's correlated to pollution. But is it, though? Remember those 2 years, 2010 and 2014. I submit that possibly going on here, there are more external factors, social and societal and external factors going on into why people might not be so much smarter. 2010 is when the first smartphone came out popularly. I know there's Blackberries before that, but the first iPhone came out in 2009, 2010, and with it, over 2010 and 2014, was the proliferation of distraction. Social media, websites, whatever, video, YouTube, everything blew up in that time period. So, is this a correlation between pollution making you more dumber or increased distraction? You can ask Siri, Alexa, Google, anything in your pocket and know anything about all of human history ever within 5 seconds. Are we smarter for it? Do you do that? Do you think that we're smarter now, having all of that distraction? I think that plays a lot into this study. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. It's going to be a fun show. Stick around. I'm Johnny Hemberger, back in just a couple minutes. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm Johnny Hemberger, your mental curator. This segment is going to be filled with just awesomeness. I don't know how much else to how else to explain it. Just going to be pure awesomenosity. Is that a word? I'm going to be talking about Lego. And I'm going to say Legos, even though I know that purists, hell hath no fury like a Lego fan scorned when you say Legos. They'll say, there's no such thing as Legos. It's Lego pieces. Legos is never pure, or plural. The plural for Legos is just Lego. Okay. I know we're all geeks about something, and I appreciate being set straight. But, as long as you're telling people that there's actually no such thing as Legos, just say it in a cool way. Don't be a tool about it, if I can just be so diplomatic. But this first story, this segment has to do with Lego and the Bugatti Chiron and their most holy of marriages. A Lego Technic team based out of the company's Klando factory in the Czech Republic have used about 1 million Lego pieces to build an actual life-size 1-to-1 scale of the Bugatti Chiron. So they're using a Lego Technic set, which has motors and all sorts of different things. And it's not like, if you're thinking they just poured out a big bucket of assorted Legos and built a Chiron out of it, that's not quite what happened. It's a Lego Technic set, which is like a set of Lego for ultra nerds. They are awesome. I haven't played with Technics in a long time. So they built this full-size 1-to-1 Lego Bugatti Chiron. And it works, and it is drivable. That's probably the coolest thing I've heard in the past few days. There's one cooler thing that I talked about regarding a video game, which I'll get to in a little bit. But this is the coolest thing, just for sheer, wow, this is so unnecessary and awesome at the same time. It's really cool. Now, let's do some facts and figures. The actual Bugatti Chiron weighs 2 tons and produces, 1,500 horsepower, I believe? Yeah, 1,500 horsepower. It is one of the most powerful production vehicles on planet Earth. Now, to compare, remember I said the Lego Bugatti Chiron is fully functional and drivable, right down to the tires and the thousands of Technic motors, little tiny motors they used in here, including little plastic cogs and plastic gears and everything. There's thousands of them in this Lego Chiron. How much horsepower do you think that produces? Those thousands of little electric Lego motors. 5.3 horsepower, or 3.95 kilowatts, but 5.3 horsepower from these thousands of electric motors. And actually a surprising amount of torque. Surprising and unsurprising. Electric motors are known for producing, one of their characteristics is all the torque. And acceleration comes from the torque, by the way. Horsepower is top speed, pushing you through the air. Torque is what takes you from 0 to 60 the quickest. That's why the new Tesla Roadster, 2020 Roadster, will do 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. It's because of the electric motors. So, horsepower, 5.3 horsepower, and the amount of torque that these little thousands of little motors produce in this Lego Chiron, 67.9 pound-feet of torque. That's gotta be more than my first car. My first car was a 1974 Volkswagen Beetle. So, it might not have been more torque. It's got to be similar torque. I'm not going to look it up right now. I want it to be a mystery until I get out of this segment. But this Lego car probably has as much torque as my first car. And you know what? It probably reaches its top speed. This Lego Chiron's top speed is about 12 miles per hour. 20 kilometers an hour, more specifically. Metric is more specific. And they used Bugatti's own test driver, Andy Wallace, to take the Lego Chiron up to a top speed of 12 miles an hour. How is this story not awesome? And I was just going to say that the Lego Chiron probably reaches 12 miles an hour faster than my old Beetle did. That's probably not a stretch. I say, my current daily driver right now goes to 60 in just under 5 seconds, which is a far cry from my first car, which was the Beetle, which I describe its 0 to 60 time as 0 to 60 in a weekend. And that's not too far off. Have you ever been 85 miles an hour in a Beetle? Just floored. I mean, you have the pedal to the metal flat out on flat ground, for 5 minutes so that you can get up to 85 miles an hour. There's a reason why that car isn't supposed to go that fast. It is horrifying at 85 miles an hour. I tell people who've never been in a Beetle going that fast, and I know 85 doesn't seem like anything, and really, in terms of top speed, it's not. But 85 in a Beetle is like being in an old tin trash can while your friends are around it. While you're sitting in the tin trash can while all of your friends get together and beat the piss out of it with baseball bats. That's what it's like to be in an old Volkswagen Beetle going 85 miles an hour. And you are just those skinny little tires, and it is not aerodynamic. You are floating on the freeway. And if you're running low on fuel, since the fuel tank is up front, the front of it keeps getting lighter and lighter and lighter, so you just have no grip up there. So when you're going 85 miles an hour, have you ever seen a speedboat do a backflip? Have you ever seen when a speedboat is just tearing ass across the water, gets some air under it, it goes over a wave, gets some air under it, and just tumbles and tumbles and tumbles and crash and goes into a million different pieces? That's what it feels like is going to happen in an old Beetle going 85. And you go to turn it, you go to steer the wheel, and you're just still going straight. It's not even understeer. It's never steer. It's no steer, not understeer. It's no steer. So I'm just reminiscing about my old Beetle. And the reason why, not to get too sidetracked, but my first car was a Beetle. It used to be my older brother's, and my dad bought it off my old brother in Austin, and he drove it home all the way back to Houston, and it burst into flames at the end of our street. Made it 200 miles or so from Austin. It's not quite 200, I don't think. 200 miles or so from Austin to the end of the street, burst into flames. And he ran into the neighbor's yard and grabbed their hose and started dousing the flames of the Beetle. Oh, good times. And I left it burnt because I just thought it looked cool. It looked cool burnt. We rebuilt the engine in like 5 minutes for almost next to nothing. And it worked in that state for a long time. Memories of your first car. I would like to know what your first car is. If you're listening or watching in anywhere that has a comment section below, what was your first car? My dad gave me that car because A, it was cheap. B, he said every conceivable problem you'll ever have with an automobile, you will go through with this vehicle. So, and that wasn't too far off from the truth. My clutch cable snapped twice. Just cruising down the street, 35 miles an hour, whatever, and just not even in, it wasn't even in fourth gear. It was shifting to second, so not going 35. I was going less than that, probably 20. Tops. Pushing the clutch to push it into third gear. Snap! Because the clutch is not hydraulic in those things. It's basically the same wire system that's on your bicycle brakes. It's just a wire that pulls the clutch, that operates that mechanism. Anyways. More cool stuff coming up here on Geek Therapy Radio, so stick around. This break really isn't that long, so we'll be back in just a few minutes. It's instant if you're listening to the podcast. But we're going to get onto some video game stuff and some other cool stuff. So more Geek Therapy Radio coming up. I'm Johnny Hamburger. Stick around. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Mental curator John Hamburger. Whoa, John Hamburger. I'm John Hamburger. That sounds so informal. Don't call me John unless you're... I don't even know. There's a handful of people on Earth who can call me John, and they're not even on Earth. They're deceased. My father, my grandfather, whose name was actually John. There was only, let me rephrase this, there was only a few people on Earth who could call me John, and most of them are dead. So don't call me John, call me Johnny. I am Johnny Hamburger, your mental curator. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. We're going to continue on with this theme of this show just being a cool show this week, since there's nothing massively breaking. Except that there kind of is, to me. And to lots of gamers out there, specifically fans. And we're going to talk about more than just this in this segment. We're going to talk about awesome new space thrusters that are possibly going to get us to Mars. So there's cool stuff coming up. But back to video games. Awesome announcement for video game fans, and especially those who are fans of the Ace Combat series. What's up, man? Anyways... we've been waiting for Ace Combat 7 for what seems like forever. And actually, and I looked into it, we have an official release date. Let me just spit that out before we go any further and I just get raked over the coals. The official release date now for Ace Combat 7 is January 18th, 2019. One more time. Ace Combat 7 officially comes out January 18th, 2019. We've been waiting for a long time. And that piqued my fancy. That got my curiosity. Piqued my curiosity. It wasn't my fancy because we've been straining over this for years. Those of us who love Ace Combat, who were severely disappointed with Event Horizon. Was that what? I don't even care. It wasn't very good. It was Call of Duty in the sky. It was not good. Not good. So Ace Combat 7, January 18th, 2019. And it got me wondering, when did it first get announced? When was the first... how long have we been waiting? And as it turns out, we've been waiting since November of 2015. So by my count, that's gonna... what is it? November 2015. We've been waiting almost 3 years. That's been announced. 3 years or so, 15 to 18 right now, currently November. 3 years. It's going to be a little over 3 years between announcement and release. And for a game like Ace Combat, for a game in the Ace Combat series with so much of us love and are looking forward to, that seems like forever. Made me think of other long releases that we've been waiting for, and I'll start with one that has never been released, and it's going to be the ultimate long con in video games if it ever gets released. And I know you're all already thinking about it, those gamers. Half-Life 3. Do you know when the last Half-Life came out? October 10th, 2007, Half-Life 2, Episode 2, October 10th, 2007. People have been waiting, it's a joke at this point, for Half-Life 3 for over 10 years. And that's crazy. It might be sacrilege to kind of say this, but I haven't played much Half-Life. So I don't, whether Half-Life 3 comes out or not, as it stands right now, me recording this in 2018, I don't really care if Half-Life 3 ever comes out. But I might start playing Half-Life, and I might be like, oh, wow, yes, this is going to be great. And I'm sure it is. I'm sure if I start playing Half-Life, I'm going to go goo goo gaga over it. I've been playing so much Just Cause 3 these days. Just Cause 4 is coming out. That's probably what triggered it. But Just Cause 3, it's great. I was up till 3 a.m. the other night because I just couldn't beat this one mission, which is tale as old as time when it comes to gamers playing video games. Anyways, the other game I was thinking of that I was waiting so long for, that so many of us were waiting so long for. Most gamers know of, even if they haven't played, which is a shame, a game called Shadow of the Colossus. Again, it's a Sony game. But Shadow of the Colossus for PlayStation 2. Before that, it was Ico, both for PlayStation 2. And when they announced PlayStation 3, what, did it come out 2006, I want to say? One of the launch titles for the PlayStation 3, unless I'm mistaken, and let me know if I'm mistaken in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. If I'm not mistaken, one of the launch titles for PS3 was supposed to be The Last Guardian. The Last Guardian just came out in the scale of games and release dates and stuff. The Last Guardian just came out for PS4. We were waiting for Last Guardian since PS3. What's that, 10 years? Is that 10 years that we were waiting for Last Guardian? They said it was going to come out launch title PS3. Either way, whether it's 10 years or not, it is such an unbearably long time. If you were, I'm not going to say a fan of the franchise, because it wasn't really. If you were a fan of the studio, of the game studio, if you liked Ico and loved Shadow of the Colossus, we were waiting with bated breath for The Last Guardian, and it came out, and it didn't receive the fanfare that I thought it was going to receive. I thought people were going to absolutely be wearing diapers and crapping themselves in line waiting to purchase this game. I mean, that pre-order, I know, but you get what I'm saying. People are just going to be... I got to keep it PG. My girlfriend's mom listens to these. My grandma might, so I can't be so... I'm not going to be so descriptive. It just be happy that I said poop in your diaper. So many little clips you can take out of this show. I thought it was going to be met with much more fanfare, and I think what happened there is it just missed the boat. I think it just missed the boat, that it had waited so long for the release that people just stopped being excited about it. Oh, Last Guardian came out, that's great. Versus if Last Guardian came out during the hype, all the hype, people waiting for it around 2006, 2007, 2008 even. Within a short enough time after Shadow of the Colossus, it would have been met with balloons and parades, but it waited too long. So Ace Combat 7, while we have been waiting so long for it to be released, I think it's pretty good timing. I think it will be met with much fanfare and many poopy diapers, mine included. I can't wait. I'm gonna get it on PC, and if I get a PS4, it's the first thing I'm gonna get. I don't have a PS4 yet. Isn't that crazy? The only reason why I would get it for PS4 is because of VR. To my knowledge, I don't think there's been any announcement that it's going to work in VR with PC. So hooking up my Oculus Rift, I don't think so. Whereas there are missions in VR for PlayStation. That is confirmed. That's for true, and that's for real. So my buddy is going to get it, and he has PSVR, and I'm going to play it and probably sleep at his house. I'm going to play it, and I'm probably going to like it so much I'm going to buy PSVR, or hopefully they just release that at least some VR missions for PC so I can put my Oculus to good use. Let's move on to one last story before we end the segment here. And that is space stuff. By the way, that big Lego Chiron that I mentioned earlier, the real Chiron weighs 4,000 pounds. The Lego Chiron weighs 3,500 pounds. 3,500 pounds. 3,500 pounds. Anyways, the next generation ion engine may be the next step in getting us interplanetary. An ion engine basically, it shoots out, what is it, xenon? What is the... It propels with electromagnetism, basically. It propels molecules of... Gosh, come on! I'm going to treat this like real live radio. Xenon! Did I get that right? Xenon molecules. It accelerates xenon molecules to very high speed and provides propulsion. It's not propulsion like it's going to lift you out of your chair or anything like that. But it is propulsion nonetheless, and once you're already in space, out of gravitational range of Earth and everything, you fire up that ion engine that fires out those xenon ions and flows of whatever. That is what's going to get us and propel us the rest of the way, most of the way, to Mars and interplanetary. So that's really cool. We're making major strides there, and by the time the missions come up, the efficiency is going to be increased by a factor of 100, they think. So that's really cool. Space news. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. I'm Johnny Hemberger. Hope you've enjoyed this really neat show so far. Really fun. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. What am I? Mental, cognitive... show around the museum of Johnny Hemberger. Mental curator. By the way, mental curator. I chose that not because that I would be the expert in any and all subjects, but curator, like the person who leads you around the museum, showing you different exhibits and maybe tells you a little bit about it. And the point is to spark someone in the group with enough interest that they delve into that exhibit further on their own time. So that's the way I present things here on Geek Therapy Radio, and why one of the tenets of the show is that, like I said, I'm not going to be an expert about everything. Nobody can be. So I invite you, the listener, or if you're watching on YouTube, you, the viewer, to add your input and expertise to any subject that I bring up. So I'm the curator, mental curator, just showing your mind around different things going on around this wonderful, beautiful world of geekdom. Geeks are sexy. There's no shame in being a geek. We're all geeks about something. Sorry, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm fiddling with the camera because the light's going down and I'm using natural light and blah, blah, blah. All what I was saying previously was to go back, or for instance, is to go back and say that I mentioned in the previous segment that ion engine was going to be I think I said on the order of magnitude 100 times more powerful than it is now by the time we're using it in space, and that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say was going to be on the magnitude of 100 more times more efficient. They're making great strides in efficiency with these engines. Heat is the enemy of efficiency. It's a byproduct of a lot of processes, and the more inefficient something is, the more heat. So, for instance, a lot of you are into computers and you're gamers and you build PCs and you know all about GPUs and CPUs. In order to make the thing faster, to overclock a CPU, you have to keep it cooler because that thing's going to generate a lot of heat. So if you can keep the thing cool, you can get more power out of it. So for example, a stock air cooler on a CPU might only allow you to overclock, if anything, let's just say 4.0 gigahertz. Stock cooler. Why? Because it just gets too hot. When you're adding voltage to the CPU to make it run faster, you're adding more heat. And since it has more heat, that makes it unstable, that makes it crash, that makes it throttle, whatever. On a stock cooler, in this case, you're only going to get 4.0 gigahertz. Now, let's put a modified cooler on it, a third-party cooler, either a big air cooler or better yet, a liquid cooler if we're talking about overclocking. Usually liquid coolers are better for overclocking, even though air coolers are so good now. Anyways, let's say you put a liquid cooler in that CPU. Now you keep that chip way cooler. You can pump more volts into it and get it to run faster. So we're on stock cooler, you can get 4.0 gigahertz. That's how many calculations per second your CPU does. 4 billion calculations per second. Now, with keeping that chip extra cool with a third-party liquid cooler, you can probably push it up to 4.2, 4.4, possibly 4.6 gigahertz. Now, 5 gigahertz isn't so unheard of. That comes down to efficiency of the chip and better cooling. So, these ion engines I mentioned previously are not necessarily going to get 100 times more powerful. Maybe they will. But they are slated to get 100 times more efficient. And that begged the question. That made me start wondering about space and space travel. And I guess that's how this segment's going to go. I'm not even going to allude to what I might talk about at the end if there's time. Don't want to tease you like that. But the ion thrusters, that's what's going to get us interplanetary. Because while they aren't the most powerful form of thrust, once you're already traveling at, I'm going to pull a number out of my head. I don't know. Again, this is a mental curator type thing. Let's say your spacecraft is traveling 60,000 miles an hour or whatever, 100,000 miles an hour. Don't quote me on any of these numbers. You're already traveling at a gargantuan amount of speed. All you need now to keep accelerating over the course of, let's say you want to accelerate 1 mile an hour over the course of every 100,000 miles you travel or something like that. An ion engine is great for that. It's very efficient. It's going to keep with a very, what amounts to a lightweight amount of fuel, in this case, xenon. You are going to be able to keep accelerating over very long distances. Where you've already exhausted all of your liquid fuel, getting out of Earth's gravitational pull, now you use a highly efficient electric engine, ion engine, to get you the rest of the way to continue the acceleration on your trajectory towards your target. That's what the ion engines are going to do. That's what's going to get us to Mars. That's what's going to get us interplanetary. You might be wondering, well, what's powering this ion engine? Is it nuclear? Usually for these long missions, it's nuclear. It's a combination of solar and nuclear. It's going to be the sun. They're just going to have big solar panels powering this ion engine, which is really neat. And it kind of made me start thinking about space travel. Why couldn't you? I don't know if you've heard of solar sails, just like a ship in the ocean, an old ship or a sailboat that still exists now. That's a better example. A sailboat out in the ocean uses the wind to push the boat over the water. Solar sails do the same thing, capturing energy radiating off of the sun and pushing. It catches the solar sail and pushes you through the ocean of space. It's a romantic way to think of it. So my thinking is, and I can't be the first one to have thought of this, of course, but possibly interplanetary travel would include a combination of both those things, of the ion thrusters and solar sails. If you're already going to have massive solar panels out there collecting energy for not only the ion thrusters, but for all the life support on board and all the computers and anything else you need to do on a spaceship that's traveling interplanetary, you'll have enough surface area so that you might as well just make those solar panels act as solar sails or have supplementary solar sails. Maybe it ejects out the front of the ship. I'm speculating. This is the geek therapy right now. This is where we get to tickle our brains a little bit. Maybe you get outside of Earth's orbit and you fire up the ion, or right before you fire up the ion thrusters, maybe you shoot the solar sails out in front. Except that wouldn't really... Let's say you have the solar sail out in front and then the ion thrusters kind of push you faster than the solar sails catching. If the ion thrusters produce more thrust than the solar sails, then having the solar sail out front, the ion thruster might push the ship into the solar sail. So maybe you be on some form of rigid system, not just cables going out there, like a parachute you're dangling from the cables. Maybe it's a solid arms going out there to make sure that the foil stays out front and there's no air resistance in space. So I'm not worried about the air resistance pushing it back. I'm worried about the thrust of the ion thruster being greater than the thrust provided by the solar winds. This is a great way to wrap up Geek Therapy Radio. Think about that. Maybe the solar sails are in the aft of the ship, not behind the thruster, not with the thrusters just thrusting ions at the solar sail. That's dumb. That doesn't work for a whole nother scientific reasons and physics reasons. But maybe out to the side of the aft of the ship. Oh man. All right. God, man. All right, that's it for Geek Therapy Radio. I'm running out of time. That's what's going to keep me up tonight. That's what I'm going to be thinking about tonight, is solar sails and ion thrusters, and hopefully you will too. Maybe there's some geeks that I've sparked an interest. So go do that. I'm Johnny Hemberger. Be good to each other, starting with yourselves. That's the best way to be good to each other. We forget to be good to ourselves. Anyways, take care. More Geek Therapy Radio next week. I'll see you then.